Hello and welcome to the KyoSync Syncing Made Simple webinar. While we're waiting for folks to come in, we'd like to introduce ourselves. My name is Justin Hesser, and I'm the president of KyoLogic, and I'll be the MC for this webinar today.
And hi, I'm John Mathewson. I'm the founder and CEO of KyoLogic and the author of KyoSync. And looking forward to sharing information with you today, addressing questions at the end as you might need. And big excited because we have the Montreal Canadiens are in the playoffs, and which they haven't been in for a while. And so we have a game tonight. We're very excited.
Yeah, and I'm riding on a bit of a high after my Florida Gators won the NCAA basketball national championship a few weeks ago. So what we'd love to know from you is where you're from and what your favorite sports team is. So please go ahead and post that in the chat. And also we have a poll open. So please go ahead and answer those questions, and we'll review that in a second. And also, throughout the presentation today, if you have any questions for us, please post them in the Q&A section, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. So we're going to wait a couple more minutes for folks to come in, and then we'll get started. All right, looks like we have somebody here from Hampstead, New Hampshire, and her favorite team is her granddaughter's basketball team,
All
which I
right.
think that's definitely a winner. Somebody from Salt Lake City, go Utes. Uh, Another New Hampshire, a Red Sox fan. We have a Cubs fan from North Carolina. And it looks like we have a fellow Gators fan from Miami. So thanks everyone for posting the chat. And I think we're gonna get going and start off by reviewing this poll. So I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So John, you can see the results on the screen, right?
Absolutely.
All right, so it looks like we have the majority of people here are curious to learn more about syncing data in FileMaker, but we have a few folks who have a potential use case that might require the syncing. Looks like we have a majority of the folks are from development firms, but some that are in an organization that uses FileMaker internally. Finally, we have a lot of developers and one other here. So looks like we're a developer-centric community here today. All right. So John, you ready to get started talking about syncing?
Let's talk about syncing.
All right. So here's our agenda for today's webinar. We're going to start off by introducing KyoSync, then discuss how it works. We have a quick demo that we'll be showing you of it in action, discuss the different use cases, what getting started with KyoSync is like, and then at the end, we'll go through any questions and answers you guys may have. So let's start off by talking about KyoSync. So what is KyoSync? KyoSync is a fully FileMaker-based tool that operates without any third-party plugins. It lets you use FileMaker offline with no connection needed, work freely, and then sync your changes back with complete reconciliation, all at the tap of a button. And John will be showing that shortly. So John, let's discuss syncing.
Okay, yeah, so I'm looking forward to sharing information. I will point out today, most of our stuff is mostly non-technical, really more trying to give you guys a visualization of how the system works and what its capabilities are. So let me dive in. I'd like to start off by discussing a brief case study. So we have a client who's got an engineering team of roughly 20 people, and they use a FileMaker iPad app to collect precise measurements typically from equipment, things like pressure readings, temperature, other things like that. But they also capture photos and signatures on site, and they all have to do this without a connection to the internet. Often that connection is just not available. And I'd like to take a moment to think about the power that we have in the FileMaker application that allows us to do all this stuff completely remotely and not connected to a server. If you think about in today's environment, that's a real gift to have those capabilities in a completely mobile device, and FileMaker allows that. Now, it works on iPads, it works on phones, and it works on iPhones, and it also works on desktops. It also works in WebDirect. So there's quite a bit of capability built into it. So when they leave the plant, it's really quite nice. They go back to their car, their hotel, or their office, and they sync everything quite quickly. One of the syncing opportunities that we've encountered is actually syncing via satellite. So it's really quite interesting to see how everything can be synced quite reliably and quickly using this application. So I'd like to give a little bit of a history just to show that this is not something that was kind of invented overnight. I started doing syncing back when we started the company actually, and we had some fairly large databases, like 25 million record kind of quantity, where we were syncing them with websites using XML and ODBC, which are two technologies that were pretty powerful. And what I learned was that we can reliably sync large volumes of records once information is properly configured. Then we wanted to do something in all FileMaker, and we came up with a thing called DynaSync, which actually saved a FileMaker file to the desktop, and that didn't depend on what device, but on your virtual desktop, and allowed you to connect your remote file to the server using a FileMaker as the connector. And we actually have a client that uses it for medical device delivery, still uses that system. It's a little clunky in the sense that you have to then delete the file afterwards, so you disconnect from the server. But it works quite reliably. But when the FileMaker came out with the API, we decided that seemed to be a great opportunity, and I developed a thing called Ramble On, which I used to test different use cases and found that it was really quite capable. That led to our first internal release of a product that we used with our clients, which is KyoSync 1, which was very powerful, very similar power to KyoSync 2. It's just that it was pretty hard to set up. It was quite time consuming. And then we came out with KyoSync 2, which did several things. It greatly simplified the process of implementing, and it also took more advantage of the new FileMaker transaction capability. So it was kind of improved in performance as well as in being easier to set up. So how it works, when we connect to the server, we establish a unique identity, and very important in this kind of network or community network is that every user has a unique identity, and it identifies who they are, what machine they're on, but also what type of connection they have. The second thing we'll do is synchronize the clocks to make sure that they're accurate down to the millisecond, so we know what updates are more current. And then we select which tables need to be synchronized. We then process each table individually according to the instructions. And then we delete any records that need to be deleted. Now, we point out many people don't want people deleting records. So this is not a requirement, but it is an available capability for people that need that capacity. Then what we do is we log the final results. We keep log files and other details about the transaction, so we can always check history if we need it. We then turn on some post-processing on the server that processes records that it's received, and then we disconnect, and basically we're all done. The nice thing about this, as I move to the demos, you'll see it all operates quite quickly. So let me share my screen and I'll show you an example. I'll go full screen with this. Okay, so this is an application that we developed to show KyoSync, and essentially what it is, it's an LP database. So what we like about it, it's got kind of all the key elements that you'd like to see and be able to see in syncing. It has the album art, so every album's got its own piece of artwork. It's got information about the album itself. It's got information about the individual tracks on the album. And although it's not visible on this screen right now, this little arrow down at the bottom it allows you to identify the artists on the album and also the credits. So it really has mainly all the types of components you run into in a larger, more complex database. So let me start the demo here and you can sort of see it in action. So what we're doing here is we're opening the host database. And I'd like to just take a pause here to emphasize what's going on. So in this situation here, the magenta top, on the band of the magenta on the top is showing that that is actually a direct connection to the server. The other application you see on the left is completely independent. It has no connection to the server whatsoever. And I mentioned about having a unique identity, and this is a good example where I'm the same user, I'm on the same machine, but I have a different identity because my type of connection is different. And so the KyoSync automatically knows that these are two different users that are being employed right now. So here we go. We'll change the album type and we'll sync. And you'll see on the right, it'll quickly update. It's now synced. We are going to modify 2 tracks and then come over here and modify 2 different tracks, both on the same album. We're then going to sync. And you'll see pretty well instantly the 2 have the same information shared. Now we're going to clean up the obvious data mistake. And for reasons unknown, we're going to add a Bob Dylan song to the Doors album. You sync. Data cleans up. And Bob Dylan's song has arrived. And now we can delete Bob Dylan's song, because obviously it was a mistake. We sync, and the deletion takes place on the other place. Now this could be happening across a client and a server, but it can also be across all users. So all users on the system will share this same behavior. So now we're going to duplicate the entire album, which means that all 4 tables have had their data duplicated, and this is on the server side. Now a user does a routine sync, doesn't even know that's happened. And lo and behold, we have an exact duplicate of the album. And I want to point out something quickly. You notice how quickly that happened. That was transmitting container information, track information, album information. It all took place that quickly. So it's quite an efficient process. So now we're going to change some artist credits. We're going to delete the Doors as being a credit on this album, which again, it doesn't make sense, but that's what we're doing. And we're going to make Jim Morrison the primary artist. So that changes immediately locally. You'll see that in the bottom left down there. And then we do a sync. And on the main server, we go in and those changes are reflected. So this is showing multiple levels of different data manipulation. We also came across this situation where we had identified an album that is on the server, but doesn't seem to have appeared to be on the client. So we go in here, we find the album, which is called JT Copy 3, and it looks like it wasn't really set up correctly anyways, but we'll add some album art to it and we'll sync. Lo and behold, there it is, same information. We trash it. Now this is trashing the entire structure. We sync. And the entire structure gets removed on the other side as well. So that's our short demo. It shows you that there's really a lot of power here. We've got all the ability to add, to modify detailed records within a master record. We have the ability to add and remove container information, and that all happens, as you can see, pretty seamlessly. And all of these behaviors are automatically included in the KyoSync application. There's no customization that was required to do any of these things. So I'm going to stop my share and back to you, Justin.
Thanks, John. And to confirm, the files that you were using for that presentation are the same files that you can download from our website, right?
Correct. Right? That is where those files came from.
Awesome. Thanks, John. All right. So let's discuss some different use cases for KyoSync. We found KyoSync can be used in many different situations. These are 5 categories that we have seen KyoSync in action. The first is remote technical work. This would be where you have a technician, sales representative, or service team out in the field who need offline data. And this is a similar use case to the one that John gave at the beginning of the presentation. The second is disaster relief support, which is in situations where your network goes down. KyoSync is used as a backup process. You give everyone a local copy of the file to complete their work, and then after the network comes back up, you sync all the data back. Third is remote service delivery for truck drivers, trade show teams, and healthcare workers who are in remote locations but still need access to their data. Fourth is machine signal interference, which is used in workplaces like power plants and specialized manufacturing facilities that have none, limited or patchy network connectivity, and need something to for their employees to still get all the work done. And then finally, planes, trains, and automobiles for frequent travelers who want to continue working while on the go and then connect back to the server when they have network access. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our second poll. And one of the questions is asking about these different use cases. So please take a look at the polls and answer the questions, and we're going to get back and review them a little bit later on. So how do you configure KyoSync? You really have 2 primary options. The first is embedded as an add-on, and the second is run as an external file. So when you have it embedded as an add-on, that's, I would say, the majority of our deployments. It has a simplified setup and deployment where all the controls are in the host application. It is less isolated, which could have security ramifications. But one major pro, and you saw it in the demo, is it allows for immediate post-processing on the server side. When run as an external file, it has better control over file security. It minimizes naming conflicts, but it does require a scheduled script for post-processing, so those server-side post-processes don't happen immediately. So it's better for security. And if you have a multi-file solution, people tend to go in that route. So it's really up to you. And both deployment methods are effective. So it ultimately comes down to your specific use case and which factors matter most to your organization. Something else to note is that not only can KyoSync be deployed in a server to remote client configuration, it can also be deployed in a server-to-server deployment. And we actually have an example of this on our website in a video with Claris and OceanX. So definitely take a look at that video. It's really interesting. All right, so we are proud to announce our very own KyoSync Assistant AI chatbot using ChatGPT. And here's the QR code for it. And I'll also share the link for it in the chat. So just bear with me. Um, it's valuable now, and we'll continue populating it to make it even more valuable in the future. We found it to be especially great when configuring KyoSync. It's a great tool to use to ask questions and have it help you set up KyoSync.
If I could comment, I was playing with it quite a bit, and I was very impressed with how it's taken all of the published information that we've done, which we've uploaded to it. So it basically is embedded in the chat already. And it tapped into it. And I was looking at it, and it just was giving really valuable contextual advice, kind of more powerful than just a raw help engine. And it also took the time to really document. If something was multiple steps, it would document the steps that needed to be followed. So I think this is a very promising new capability and something that we're very excited to share with you.
Thanks, John. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And while we review the results, please go ahead and post any questions you have in the Q&A section, and we'll definitely get to those questions. So I'm going to go ahead and share the results. All right. So which use case applies to you or your clients? We had a winner being remote service delivery. Remote technical support was also something, as well as transportation, being things that people found interesting or opportunities. How important is an offline sync solution for you right now? We had kind of a varied response between 9 and 4. And then finally, how interested are you in a follow-up call or pilot of KyoSync? And we had a couple of 10s, some 8s, and some 5s. So that is our polls, and now we'll get to the Q&A. And it looks like here's our first question. Can I perform partial syncs, just a single table, as opposed to the entire system?
Yes, there in the configuration, you can specify up to 3 different strategies. And in the ship example that we gave, they do a shortened sync during the day, and then at night they do a full sync of a broader range of tables. So the answer is yes, that's built into the interface.
Awesome. Thanks, John. All right. So it looks like we have one question in the chat that I'll just ask you here. How do you handle in your example when 2 people are editing track 2 at the same time?
We when I was doing research about this, one of the things that we sort of came across was that sort of thing is typically best handled by business rules. If you think about most sync operations, typically field service kind of work, most people are modifying data specific to their job requirements, and that's unlikely to be the same as someone else's job requirements. We currently do not have a specific conflict management tool, but you can set who wins, and typically it's the latest person to commit their changes would win in that situation. The other thing that's true is that all of the data that is sent is the transactions are stored. I mentioned the post-processing logging, and in that are all the original packets of data that were sent. So if it were necessary to rerun a particular packet of data, that's something that an administrator can do.
All right. Thanks, John. So what happens if the connection gets interrupted while syncing is in process?
So every stage of the process, it's all handled transactionally, which means that the entire transaction has to be completed. And so, for example, you could have the FileMaker API is layout based. And so if you have a layout that, for instance, has the album the album credits, the artist, etc., all on the same layout, then that data will be sent as one packet, and it will either be successful or non-successful. So if there's a failure of communication, then the confirmation will come back that it was not successful, and it'll act like nothing happened, and you would just have to resync at a subsequent time.
Thanks, John. All right. So here's a question. I think you might have answered this earlier, but I'll ask it to you again. How much control do I have over conflict resolution?
The main control that you have is specifying who wins. If the server has information that's updated and the client has information that's updated, you can specify on a table by table basis who wins in that conflict. And typically, we would recommend that it be the client, because normally that's the more sensitive side, but that's the control that's there at this point.
Thanks, John. All right. So here's a technical question, but I think a pretty good one. Uh, does this use the data API or OData? And then a follow-up question to that is, if the data API, are there plans to convert it to OData?
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, we were just at the Claris Engage where everyone was talking about the advent of OData and how it has some superior qualities. A number of the different controls that are used within KyoSync, execute data API, etc., getting a little technical, those are all API based right now. So we're obviously keeping a close look at that. And if those and when those various controls are converted to OData, then we will support that changeover.
Thanks, John. All right. What happens to records that are deleted on one file or the other? Would the conflict be handled in the same way?
Yeah, so how the deletion works is that it actually sends an instruction to the server in a separate meta file, which comes embedded in the system, and it issues instructions to delete various pieces of information from the machine. So the in the case of there being an update and a delete, at this point, the delete would take precedent. That's probably something that could be modified, but at this point, that's how it would work. So if the delete instruction is there and the delete instruction is run, then that will remove the record from really any machine on the network.
All right. Can this system be used for branching and version control, something along the lines of Git?
The closest I can say to that is when I was doing a presentation on this at Engage, I had made a number of updates to the data that was in my live presentation, which was running on my local server, actually on my laptop, a virtual server. And then I said, well, I want to have that on our demo system that's on our website. And it was really very easy for me to synchronize it to my local application, change my destination from my internal server to the demo server, and transmit all the data, and it just transmitted easily. So we discovered really through that process that there's a powerful way that you can use it to transmit data from one location to another.
Um, and regarding, I think what they were trying to get to with that question is, um, we have KyoSync 2, and eventually there will be a KyoSync 3, and how we would handle the process of, um, and for people who already have KyoSync implemented but want the new functionalities, how we would go about kind of updating the version of KyoSync they're using.
Okay, great. Sorry. So what we did intentionally is that the KyoSync modules are very self-contained. So the intention is that the new capabilities would be put into a new module of exactly the same name, and you literally would replace the contents of the one module with another. It's a very quick process. I've done it many times. So it's not a bunch of scattered files and capabilities. Each of the major processes has its own processor capability, and we would be replacing that whole capability. So there'd be no need to modify your data or anything like that.
Thanks, John. All right. So this is a really great question. How would you handle a situation where the remote person is online and connected to the server sometimes, but offline other times? So sometimes they need to be connected and sometimes they want to be offline.
FileMaker came out with a capability to kind of dynamically do that, and we've tested it a bit, but it's a little bit of a flaky, I wouldn't say flaky, but difficult. So literally what people have been doing is they literally have two versions of the app. They have one that they can open remotely. In other words, they're literally connecting to the server as we traditionally do. And they have one that they can use without connecting to the server. And then you can synchronize between those two, just like we demoed in the app. So that's the easiest way to handle it. You simply have my connected version and I have my remote version, and I just use which one is appropriate for my situation. I can always synchronize data both directions between the two of them.
Awesome. All right. So if there are any more questions, please feel free to post them now. If not, you can definitely reach out to us. We have our contact us information here. I've also included the links for both the KyoSync webpage and the contact page on in the chat, as well as the chat bot. So I think, John, that concludes our webinar. So thank
Yeah,
you very much for
yeah.
joining.
I have one closing comment. Please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to help you. Obviously we want this to be a success. We've used it internally with great success, and we have, a real interest in making sure it's successful for you as well. So feel free to reach out to us.
All right. Well, thank you very much, John, and thank you very much for attending. And we do have a survey that should populate after you leave. So please feel free to fill that out, and obviously feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about KyoSync or are interested in it. All
Thank you.
right. Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
coming. Take care.